My mother demanded I hide my pregnancy and baby so my sister could have all wedding attention. When I refused, she tried to illegally put my son up for adoption. Hi everyone, I'm Jessica, and I'm about to share the most horrifying story of family betrayal you've probably ever heard. This involves my own mother trying to steal my baby, literally trying to have my son adopted without my knowledge using fake legal documents. If you think your family drama is bad, trust me, it doesn't compare to this nightmare. Let me start from the beginning. I'm 26 years old, and I've always been what you might call the disappointing daughter in my family. My younger sister Melissa has always been the golden child, straight A's, cheerleader, homecoming queen, the works. She's everything my parents wanted in a daughter, and they never let me forget it. Growing up, I was constantly compared to her, constantly reminded that I needed to try harder to be more like Melissa. When Melissa got engaged to her college boyfriend last year, you'd think she'd won the Nobel Peace Prize based on how my parents reacted. My mother immediately went into full wedding planning mode, treating this like it was going to be the social event of the century. She started planning everything down to the smallest detail: the venue, the flowers, the guest list, the timeline. This wedding became her entire personality. Now, here's where my story gets complicated. Around the same time Melissa announced her engagement, I found out I was pregnant. I was in a relationship with my boyfriend Marcus for about 2 years at that point. We weren't planning on getting pregnant, but we weren't exactly being super careful either. When I saw those 2 pink lines on the test, I was scared but also excited. Marcus and I had talked about having kids eventually, and even though the timing wasn't perfect, we were both ready to step up and be parents. I decided to tell my family the news at our weekly Sunday dinner. I thought they'd be excited about having their first grandchild. I was so wrong. When I announced my pregnancy, the reaction was cold. My father just grunted and went back to his food. Melissa looked annoyed that I was stealing her thunder, but my mother? My mother looked absolutely furious. After dinner, my mother pulled me aside and said we needed to have a serious conversation. She sat me down and explained that my pregnancy was going to ruin everything for Melissa's wedding. She said that having a pregnant bridesmaid would look tacky in the photos, and that people would be talking about my baby instead of focusing on Melissa's special day. I tried to explain that my due date was still 3 months after the wedding, so I'd just be showing a little bit, nothing dramatic. But my mother wasn't having it. She told me that I needed to keep my pregnancy low-key and not mention it to any extended family members until after the wedding. She actually used the phrase, "Don't let your mistake overshadow your sister's happiness." That word, mistake, hit me like a punch to the gut. This was her grandchild we were talking about, and she was calling it a mistake because it might interfere with wedding photos. I tried to go along with it at first. I didn't post anything on social media about the pregnancy. I wore loose clothing to family events. When relatives asked if I was putting on weight, I just changed the subject. It felt awful hiding something I was so excited about, but I told myself it was just temporary, just until after the wedding. But as my pregnancy progressed, hiding it became impossible. By month 7, there was no amount of loose clothing that could disguise my belly. People started asking direct questions, and I couldn't keep lying to everyone. So I started being honest when people asked, but I kept it low-key, just like my mother wanted. That's when my mother escalated things. She called me in a rage after my aunt posted a comment on Facebook congratulating me on the pregnancy. My mother screamed at me for ruining Melissa's moment and said I was being selfish and attention-seeking. She demanded that I tell people I wasn't sure about the due date and that maybe the baby would come after the wedding. I finally had enough. I told my mother that I wasn't going to lie about my pregnancy anymore, and that if she couldn't be happy about her grandchild, that was her problem, not mine. I said that Melissa's wedding was important, but my baby was important too, and I wasn't going to pretend otherwise. My mother's response was chilling. She said, "If you can't put your family first, then maybe you're not ready to be a mother." The wedding came and went. My son Oliver was born 2 weeks before the ceremony, which meant I couldn't even attend. My mother was actually happy about this. She said it was better for everyone that I wouldn't be there to distract from Melissa. I was heartbroken that I missed my sister's wedding, but I was also relieved that I didn't have to deal with the family drama while adjusting to being a new mom. Marcus and I were completely overwhelmed those first few weeks. Oliver was colicky and barely slept. I was exhausted, emotional, and struggling with breastfeeding. We were both first-time parents trying to figure everything out. Marcus was great, but he had to go back to work after just 1 week, leaving me alone with the baby most of the time. My mother offered to help, which I thought was her way of making amends. She started coming over every few days, bringing food and offering to watch Oliver so I could shower or nap. I was so grateful for the help that I didn't question her motives. Looking back, I should have been suspicious about this sudden change in attitude, but I was too exhausted to think clearly. About 6 weeks after Oliver was born, my mother suggested that I should take a weekend away to recover and recharge. She said she'd arranged for me to stay at a spa resort about 2 hours away, and that she'd watch Oliver the whole time. She even had Marcus convinced this was a great idea, saying that new mothers need time to themselves to avoid postpartum depression. I was hesitant to leave Oliver for a whole weekend. I was still breastfeeding and had never been away from him for more than a few hours. But everyone kept telling me it would be good for me, and honestly, I was so exhausted that the idea of sleeping for 8 straight hours sounded like heaven. So I went. I spent Friday night and Saturday at the spa, getting massages, sleeping, eating real meals without having to hold a baby. It was the first time I'd felt human in weeks, but something felt off the whole time. I kept calling home to check on Oliver, and my mother's responses were weird. She'd answer quickly and say everything was fine, but she sounded rushed and wouldn't let me talk to Marcus. I tried calling Marcus directly, but his phone kept going to voicemail. When I finally reached him Saturday evening, he sounded strange and distant. He said Oliver was fine but wouldn't give me details about how the day went. He just kept saying everything's under control and that I should enjoy my last night at the spa. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong, so I decided to come home early. I checked out of the spa Sunday morning instead of Sunday afternoon and drove straight home. When I got to our apartment, Marcus wasn't there, and neither was Oliver. I started panicking. I called Marcus over and over, but no answer. I called my mother, and she sounded shocked that I was home early. She said Marcus had taken Oliver for a walk and they'd be back soon. But hours passed, and they still weren't home. Finally, Marcus came back to the apartment alone. No baby, no diaper bag, nothing. When I asked where Oliver was, Marcus broke down crying. He told me the most horrifying thing I've ever heard in my life. My mother had convinced Marcus that I was having a mental breakdown and that I was unfit to care for Oliver. She had shown him fake documents that looked official and legal, saying that I had voluntarily agreed to place Oliver for adoption because I couldn't handle being a mother. She told Marcus that social services was involved and that the adoption had to happen immediately for Oliver's safety. Marcus, who was also exhausted and overwhelmed, believed her. He thought he was protecting both me and Oliver by going along with it. My mother had arranged for Oliver to be placed with a family she'd found through some private adoption agency. The whole thing had been set up during the weekend while I was at the spa. I was screaming, crying, completely hysterical. My baby was gone. My own mother had stolen my child using lies and forged documents. Marcus was sobbing, saying he thought he was doing the right thing, that my mother had convinced him I was having some kind of psychotic break and might hurt Oliver. I immediately called the police. When the officers arrived, I explained what had happened, and they were as shocked as I was. They said this was definitely illegal. You can't just take someone's child and place them for adoption without the mother's consent. No matter what fake documents you have, the police went to my mother's house to question her. She actually tried to stick to her story at first, claiming that I had signed papers agreeing to the adoption and that I was mentally unstable, but when the police asked to see these documents, they were obviously fake. The letterhead was wrong, the signatures didn't match, and the whole thing was clearly forged. But here's the worst part: my mother had already delivered Oliver to this family. She gave the police their contact information, but when the officers went to their house, the family was gone. They had packed up and left town with my baby. The next few days were the worst of my life. The police had issued an Amber Alert, but we had no idea where this family had gone. My mother was arrested for child abduction, fraud, and about 6 other charges, but that didn't bring Oliver back. Every hour that passed, I imagined my baby getting further and further away from me. The police traced the fake adoption agency my mother had used, and it turned out to be connected to a larger illegal adoption ring. These people were essentially selling babies to couples who couldn't or didn't want to go through legitimate adoption channels. They preyed on desperate families and vulnerable mothers, using fake documentation to make everything look legal. On the 3rd day, police found Oliver. The family my mother had given him to had driven to another state, but they were caught at a gas station when someone recognized Oliver from the Amber Alert photos. When the police arrested them, they claimed they had no idea the adoption was illegal. They said my mother and the fake agency had convinced them that I was a drug addict who had voluntarily given up my parental rights. I don't think I've ever cried as hard as I did when the police brought Oliver back to me. He was safe and unharmed, but those 3 days felt like a lifetime. I couldn't stop holding him, couldn't stop checking to make sure he was really okay. My mother was charged with kidnapping, child endangerment, fraud, conspiracy, and about 10 other felonies. The fake adoption agency was shut down, and several other people were arrested. During the investigation, we learned that my mother had been planning this for weeks. She had contacted the illegal agency shortly after Oliver was born and had been working with them to set up the fake adoption. The most horrifying part was learning about her motives. In her confession to police, my mother said she believed that having a baby would ruin my life and that Oliver deserved better parents than Marcus and me. She actually thought she was doing everyone a favor by having him secretly adopted. She said that once some time passed, I would thank her for saving me from the burden of single motherhood, even though Marcus and I were together and committed to raising Oliver. She also admitted that she was embarrassed about having an unwed daughter with a baby and that she thought it made the family look bad. She said that people at Melissa's wedding had been asking about Oliver, and it was humiliating to explain that her oldest daughter had a baby out of wedlock. The whole thing was about appearances and control. My mother couldn't stand that I had made a choice she didn't approve of, so she decided to fix the situation by stealing my child. The legal proceedings took months. My mother eventually pled guilty to avoid a longer sentence, but she still got 8 years in prison. The fake adoption agency people got even longer sentences. The family who took Oliver also faced charges, though they got lighter sentences because they cooperated with the investigation and the court believed they genuinely thought the adoption was legal. The worst part of the whole ordeal wasn't even the kidnapping, it was how my family reacted afterwards. My father stood by my mother throughout the entire thing. He actually tried to convince me to drop the charges, saying that families should stick together and that my mother only wanted what was best for everyone. He said that sending my mother to prison wouldn't help anyone and that I should focus on moving forward. Melissa was somehow even worse. She was angry at me for ruining her honeymoon with all the police investigations and family drama. She said that I was being vindictive by pressing charges and that I should have handled this privately. She actually suggested that maybe my mother had a point about me not being ready for motherhood since I had let this happen. Let me be clear, I didn't let anything happen. My own mother stole my child using fake legal documents while I was away on a trip she had arranged. There was no way I could have predicted or prevented this. The family dynamics completely imploded after this. My father and Melissa cut me off completely, saying I had destroyed the family by having my mother arrested. My extended family was split. Some of them supported me, but others thought I was being too harsh on my mother. Several relatives actually said I should forgive and forget because family is family. But here's what they didn't understand: what my mother did wasn't just a family dispute or a disagreement about parenting. It was a serious crime. She kidnapped my child. She used forged documents to try to permanently separate me from my baby. She traumatized Marcus, Oliver, and me in ways that we're still dealing with. Marcus and I ended up moving to a different state to get away from all the family drama. We needed a fresh start somewhere where people didn't know our story and where we could focus on healing and building our life together without constantly dealing with family members who thought we should get over it. It's been 2 years since this happened, and we're doing much better now. Oliver is a happy, healthy toddler who doesn't remember anything about those horrible 3 days. Marcus and I got married about a year ago, partly because we realized how much we loved each other through this crisis, and partly to make sure we both have full legal rights to protect Oliver if anything like this ever happens again. I've gotten therapy to deal with the trauma of having my child stolen. For months after we got Oliver back, I couldn't let him out of my sight. I had panic attacks every time someone else held him. I couldn't sleep because I was constantly checking to make sure he was still in his crib. The therapist helped me work through the anxiety and trust issues. My mother is still in prison and will be for several more years. She's written me letters trying to apologize, but they all follow the same pattern. She's sorry for how things turned out, but she still thinks her intentions were good. She still believes she was trying to help me by having Oliver adopted. She can't or won't understand that her intentions don't matter when her actions were criminal and traumatic. I haven't responded to any of her letters, and I don't plan to. Some people think I should forgive her because she's my mother, but I can't forgive someone who stole my child. There are some things that go beyond normal family conflicts, and this is one of them. My father and Melissa have made a few attempts to reconcile over the years, usually around holidays or Oliver's birthday, but they always come with conditions. They want me to move past this and rebuild family relationships without acknowledging how wrong my mother's actions were. They want me to bring Oliver to visit my mother in prison because she's his grandmother and she loves him. But here's the thing: love doesn't kidnap. Love doesn't forge legal documents to steal a child from their mother. Whatever my mother felt for Oliver, it wasn't love. It was obsession with control and appearances. I've built a new family now: Marcus, Oliver, and me. We have friends who've become like family, people who supported us through this crisis and who love Oliver unconditionally. We have Marcus's family, who were horrified by what happened and who have embraced both Oliver and me completely. Oliver is growing up knowing that he has parents who will always fight for him, who will never let anyone take him away, and who love him exactly as he is. He doesn't need the toxic influence of people who think stealing children is acceptable under any circumstances. Looking back, I can see that there were warning signs I missed. My mother's obsession with appearances, her need to control every situation, the way she always put Melissa's needs above mine. But I never imagined she would go this far. I never thought my own mother would steal my child. If there's anything I want people to take from this story, it's that family relationships aren't sacred just because they're family. When someone commits a serious crime against you, especially one that puts your child in danger, you have every right to protect yourself and your family, even if that means cutting off family members permanently. People always say, but she's your mother, or blood is thicker than water. But my first responsibility is to my son. I have to protect him from people who would hurt him, regardless of their relationship to me. My mother proved that she's willing to traumatize and endanger Oliver to get what she wants, and I can't allow her access to him ever again. Oliver is safe now, and that's what matters. We have a good life, filled with people who love and support. us. And sometimes, that means creating your own family from people who choose to love you, rather than people who think love gives them the right to control and hurt you. That's my story. It's not a happy family reunion story, and I don't have a relationship with my mother anymore. But I have my son, I have my husband, and I have my peace of mind knowing that I did everything I could to protect my child from someone who would hurt him. And honestly, that's enough for me.